Scariest New York housing market crash just got worse. Are you one of the many renters in New York City struggling to keep up with skyrocketing rent prices? With the median asking rent reaching $3,500 in June 2022, a 35% increase from the previous year, finding affordable housing in the city has become increasingly difficult. And with the recent approval of the highest rent hike in almost a decade, the housing market crash just got worse. In this video, we'll explore the factors driving these unprecedented rent hikes, the impact on renters like Casey, Thelma, and Ernestine, and the challenges of navigating the competitive rental market in New York City. Stay tuned to find out how the housing crisis in New York City may affect your future and what you can do to prepare. Renting a home in New York City has become a financially crippling experience, with the median asking rent surging to an astronomical $3,500 in June 2022, a 35% increase from the previous year. Affording a rental has become increasingly challenging for many, with some renters witnessing their rents soar by at least 30%. Landlords are charging top dollar for vacant apartments, leaving renters struggling to make ends meet. For half of these renters, more than 30% of their income goes towards rent, while a third spend over 50%. With rent taking up a considerable chunk of their income, some are questioning whether owning property in the city is even feasible. And for renters like Casey Cleary, Thelma Rose Annan, and Ernestine Siu, who have seen significant rent hikes, the question remains, what is causing these unprecedented surges, and is there any relief in sight? New York City has maintained its high cost of living due to high demand, driven by the city's diversity and abundance of amenities, such as Broadway shows and museums. Additionally, the city has historically had a low housing supply, further driving up costs. However, the pandemic caused a significant drop in the city's population, leading to an unprecedented number of vacant apartments in Manhattan, and causing rental prices to decrease. This drop in rental prices allowed younger generations, such as millennials and Gen Z, to finally afford to live in the city. Landlords faced uncertainty during the pandemic, with concerns about tenants' ability to pay rent and their own financial obligations such as mortgages and city bills. Ernestine, a recent graduate from California, relocated to New York in January 2021 to commence her first job at CNBC's Fast Money. Due to the pandemic, the city was sparsely populated, and she and her roommate secured a two-bedroom apartment in Manhattan's East Village at a discounted rate of $2,250 per month. The apartment was equipped with a rare in-unit washer-dryer. Casey and her husband had been residing in their one-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side since 2015, and during the pandemic, they received a $450 reduction in rent. Although they considered moving to a more spacious apartment, their landlord agreed to reduce their rent to a satisfactory amount, which made them content. Thelma, who had been living in New York since 2018, achieved a personal milestone in 2020 by acquiring a one-bedroom apartment for an incredible price of $1,882, which eventually increased to $2,400 in the following year. Although she had to make sacrifices, such as having oatmeal for dinner to afford rent, she was elated to have found and been able to afford her place, which had become more affordable due to the pandemic. Rent prices soared as the city began to reawaken in mid-2021, as vaccines became available and restrictions were lifted, resulting in tenants losing their bargaining power. This resulted in bidding wars for rental properties, which was previously unheard of in the rental market. The original rent was $2,250, but the landlord is now asking for a renewal rate of $4,395. This came as a shock and caused the speaker to refresh the page, thinking it was an error. The increase is significant and seems unreasonable, with the speaker feeling that their apartment is not worth the proposed rent. They attempted to negotiate with the landlord, but were quickly denied, with the landlord claiming that the preferred rate had already been offered. The pandemic has affected landlords' profits, and with low inventory, they can charge higher rates to make up for losses. Many small landlords in Brooklyn and Queens rely on rental income to offset their expenses and mortgage payments, which is a common misconception about New York City landlords. Nearly 2/3 of the housing units in the city are rentals, with approximately 1 million units being subject to rent stabilization laws that limit the amount landlords can increase rent each year. Despite this, even those fortunate enough to reside in rent-stabilized units are experiencing rent hikes exceeding the norm. In June 2022, the New York City Rent Guidelines Board approved a 3.25% increase on one-year leases and a 5% 4% increase on 2-year leases, marking the highest rent hike in almost a decade. The borough of Manhattan has experienced the most rapid growth, but also suffered the most significant impact on prices. Year over year, prices in Manhattan have increased by over 40%, a reality that would have seemed like a typo in the past, but is now a harsh truth for residents struggling to keep up. Even if one possesses all the qualities of an ideal tenant, such as a full-time job, a high income, and being single and quiet, it's still challenging to afford housing in Manhattan. This raises the question, who is the housing market catering to? A couple, after receiving their lease renewal notice, knew immediately that they were not interested in renewing and began searching for a new apartment. They found a promising one in Kew Gardens, Queens, and began the application process. However, things took a turn when one of them was laid off from their job the same day and had no proof of employment or pay stubs to provide, which was required for the application. Without any other options, the couple decided to move into an Airbnb in the Bronx for its flexibility and short-term lease options. In retrospect, the couple realized that declining their landlord's offer of $700 more in rent was not the best decision, as the cost of Airbnb was almost as much as the rent increase. Apartment hunting in New York City proved to be a frustrating experience, as they had to weigh the benefits of different neighborhoods against safety concerns and other factors. Despite viewing multiple apartments, the couple found it challenging to get approved due to the competitive nature of the rental market in New York City. Applicants often need to earn 40 times the rent to qualify, making it challenging for many New Yorkers. They even applied to apartments they weren't sure about just for backup and had to pay $1,000 deposit just to consider their application for one apartment. As real estate agents, they have noticed that apartments are often rented within a week of being listed, sometimes during the first showing. With inventory rising, people who were previously able to afford pandemic deals are getting priced out, leading to more apartments becoming available. The income requirement to qualify for apartments is also becoming increasingly classist and unfair. Despite the challenges, the couple eventually found a perfect apartment in downtown Brooklyn, but had to find a guarantor as they didn't meet the income requirement. They're even considering living in Jersey City as an option. The apartment search process in New York City is undoubtedly a grueling experience. Casey has put her apartment search on hold until she secures a new job, exploring various remote job opportunities that could take her to cities like New York, Boston, or Philadelphia. However, the high cost of living in New York has made her consider storing her belongings and working remotely in Europe until the housing market stabilizes. Meanwhile, Ernestine is thrilled to move to Brooklyn with her roommate, attracted by its proximity to water, restaurants, and healthy activities. But the upfront costs of securing an apartment, including the broker's fee, have depleted her savings and forced her to make lifestyle adjustments. Both Casey and Ernestine feel uncertain about their future and the stability of their living situations. The current housing crisis boils down to the basic principle of supply and demand. High demand for living in New York City and limited apartments available have resulted in unaffordability. It leaves individuals feeling like they are in a race with a constantly shifting finish line, uncertain about the purpose of their efforts. However, there is hope that the situation may improve. If the U.S. economy stabilizes, there may be an increase in apartment inventory as people move out of the city or more construction is built to meet demand. Alternatively, a recession with significant job losses may result in price drops as people can no longer afford their current rent. As the scales tip towards buying rather than renting, individuals are questioning why they're paying high rent when they could own the same apartment for less. The mental strain of deciding between paying a premium to stay in New York City for its opportunities or moving home to save money has been challenging. Despite feeling pushed out of the city, many remain optimistic that something will break and more opportunities and apartments will become available. While the past 2 years of living in New York have been inspiring and uplifting, the current housing crisis has taken a toll on individuals' resilience. If you're a renter in New York City, the current housing crisis can feel overwhelming. The high demand for housing and limited inventory has driven up rent prices to unprecedented levels, leaving many struggling to make ends meet. However, there is hope for improvement in the future. The U.S. economy stabilizing could result in an increase in apartment inventory or more construction to meet demand. Alternatively, a recession could result in price drops as people can no longer afford their current rent. Despite the challenges, renters like like Casey, Thelma, and Ernestine remain optimistic about their future in the city. They're willing to make sacrifices and explore new opportunities to find affordable housing in their preferred neighborhoods. The housing crisis in New York City is a reminder of the importance of being prepared for unexpected challenges. It's essential to have a financial plan in place, save for emergencies, and explore different housing options that fit your budget and lifestyle. Thank you for watching this video on the housing crisis in New York City. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more informative content.